So we're on page 1070. I really want to finish Savo today. We're on page 1070, and there's a concept here that really applies to Rosh Hashanah as well. The Torah says, we started this yesterday. Hayom hazeh Hashem Elokecha metzavcha lasos es hachukim ha'ila. You see where there is about 9 lines from the bottom. Perik Chavav Pasuk Tes Zayin, 26:16. Hayom hazeh Hashem Elokecha metzavcha lasos es hachukim ha'ila. On this day Hashem commands you to do these chukim, these statutes, ves hamishpatim, v'shamarta v'asisa osam b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha. You should keep them and you should obey them with all your heart and all your soul. Now, if you take a look at Rashi over here, Rashi says it's the left column of Rashi. About 8 lines from the bottom, 9 lines from the bottom. If you find it, please show the person next to you.
1070 or what?
Page 1070. 1070, left column of Rashi. Left column of Rashi, 10 lines from the bottom. Hayom hazeh, Hashem lokacha betzavcha. What does it mean on this day Hashem commands you to keep it? What does it mean on this day? Says Rashi, B'chol yom iyu beinecha chadoshim. Every day they should be new. Ki ilu bo bayom nitztavisa aleihem. As if on that day you were commanded. So, one of the challenges that we face, okay, probably while you're up, just to close the door, both doors, the other door also, if possible. One of the challenges we face as Torah Jews is maintaining daily enthusiasm. Because like anything else, and we spoke about this as far as like tourists, we spoke about Dovid Hashem Ori, like anything else, there's always it's almost human nature that we start taking things for granted. And you get into, you do it by rote and it becomes old hat, and you just become conditioned to something, and you could lose anything if you eat steak every day. If you eat steak every day, it loses the excitement. And it wears off. It becomes something you're used to. But on a day that you don't have steak, you're just kind of disappointed. It's not that you're excited on a day. If you'd walk into the lunchroom here at Ohr Somayach and you saw that they were serving steak, right? There'd be a lot of smiles, right? If you work in a restaurant where you eat steak every day, that's what you expect for lunch. It doesn't have the same thrill. It doesn't carry the same thrill. One of the tricks in learning Torah, especially in studying Torah, but in doing the mitzvahs, putting on tefillin every day, is that challenge of maintaining the freshness. That's the difficulty of the constant challenge. Rav Steinman Zatzal, with the Gadol Hador, was once on a plane, and he was flying from, I think, Baltimore to Toronto. And as they flew, they happened to fly over the Niagara Falls. They're flying. Now, Rav Steinman was sitting on a plane and he's studying Gemara. Obviously, he's studying. We're on page 1070, gentlemen. 1070. And the plane flew over Niagara Falls. Rav Steinman was sitting there studying the Gemara. And somebody said to him, they're looking out the window, and somebody said, Rabbi, you have to see this. This is the wonders of creation, Niagara Falls. And Rav Steinman said to him, no. He pointed to his Gemara and says, this is the wonders of creation. This right here is the wonders of creation. So the idea being that there is endless excitement and potential, particularly in Torah study, whereas the physical world, better not to eat in this year because of Kavod Torah. It's not what do you call it? That's one of our rules. And you could drink, but to eat is already what do you call it? Steinman said, this is the wonders of creation. The wonders of creation are right here. Now, it's challenging. Let's face the fact. It is challenging that a person maintain the excitement every day of studying Torah, the excitement of putting on tefillin. And I'm not talking about artificial excitement, like, oh, wow, let's put on tefillin, my favorite. I'm talking about actually feeling that we're doing something significant. It's something good. The Hasidic approach, very often, by the way, is the external there is a concept that the external affects the internal. The way you dress affects how you feel. If you wear a tank top and shorts, if you're wearing a tank top and you're wearing shorts, it's not a great way to go study for college finals. Right? I wouldn't. If you've got to study for your midterms and you're wearing tank top and shorts, as soon as you see somebody walking down the hall with a tennis racket, you're up. You're much better off. You're much better off wearing as formal clothing as you can when around midterms time and around finals time. That'll keep you in the library longer. With heavy street shoes. If you're wearing gym shoes and you're wearing what do you call it? You're just not in a studying mood. There's a store in Chicago, by the way. There's a store where I remember growing up. It was a grocery store. He had kosher and non-kosher products. It was the only store. They used to ship in the Chalav Yisrael milk from New York. In Chicago, they didn't have it. Now they have it in all the shops. When I was growing up, you had to go into this shop and you'd ask the guy for the kosher milk. That was the Chalav Yisrael milk from New York. Now this guy employed public school teenagers working in the store. They worked behind the counter. He ran a very, very good operation. These were kids, they're 17, 16, 17, 18 years old, who worked behind the counter. Every one of them had a white shirt and a tie and an apron, a long apron. And when you look over the counter, you can see he's got jeans and sneakers on. But you can't see it when you see the counter. When you look at the counter, all you see is a white shirt and tie. That has an effect, on the customer. That's a teenager with a shirt and a tie. I'm sure that as soon as he's out of here, he's completely and totally, utterly drug addicted. But out there in the store, he looks official, and it has an effect on him as well. It has an effect on the person. When you put on a tie and you dress smart, it has an effect on your mood. So we very much believe the external affects the chitzonius, affects the ptimius. If you ever go into an optometry shop, you go into to get glasses. The lady who's helping you pick out glasses, she's always wearing a lab coat. Isn't that true? She's wearing a lab coat. She must know a lot about glasses, because it has an effect. It has an effect on you. It has an effect on her. There was I don't know if when you guys were in school, the kids who are working as the kids who help you cross the street, the traffic kids, and they're wearing that orange thing over there. They look like big shots wearing that orange thing. But it has an effect. It has an effect on the kid. It has an effect on him because the external affects the internal. In Chassidus, they use this very much, all the simcha, the dancing and the singing, to try to arouse something on the inside. Litvaks are stereotyped as being cold, dry, and which we're not. We sing Zemiros on Shabbos also, so we're not called dry. We're just not. It's not our main focus, but we do. If you're a Litvak, you can sing Zemiros. It's not an Avera. You can sing Zemiros, but we try to generate the problem with the external simcha. The problem with that is often it ignores what's genuine, which is it should be coming from the inside. So the trick is how to maintain this. Now, if you look ahead, skip ahead now for a second to, because it's the same idea. Skip ahead to Perek Chav Zayin Pasuk Tes, 27:9, which is on page 1072. And look at Pasuk Tes. Vayidaber, and it's very similar terminology. Vayidaber Moshe the Kohanim al Levim al Kol Yisrael Leibor Moshe and the Kohanim and Levim, the Levim, they speak to the Bnei Yisrael. They say the following: Haske Sushma Yisrael, pay attention, Yisrael, listen. Hayom Hazen Yesel La'am L'Hashem L'Kacha. On this day you've become a nation. And again, he uses the expression on this day. What we're looking at over here, it says on this day Hashem commands you, and now it says on this day you've become a nation. Now take a look at Rashi over here. Rashi over here says. Where is it? Bottom line. The bottom line of Rashi on the right column. Hayom azen yesa la'am, and this day you've become a nation. B'chol yom yu beinecha kilu hayom basa imo bebris. Every day it should be as if this is the day you enter the covenant with God. So you have the emphasis, the same emphasis, that every day it should be fresh every day. What's going on with this every day? The answer is like this. There's an interesting halacha when on Yom Kippur. Rosh Hashanah, we don't bang our chest. By the way, you never bang your chest, right? Sometimes people start clapping al chet. You got to hear like a drum beat across the shul. Don't do that. Don't do that. First of all, there's a danger. A direct hit over the heart could cause complete a cardiac arrest, right? So don't do that, right? Don't hit hard. And the idea isn't like to hurt yourself. You don't should walk out of shul. We shouldn't have any Hatzalah calls during vidui, right? No Hatzalah calls. While he's confessing his sins, they'll do that. You just give a gentle what he called as a reminder. Yeah, it's our one. No Hatzalah. I don't want to see Hatzalah in the yeshiva. So the idea here is that the halacha says that's a sin that you've confessed for. Somebody does an aveira in the course of you. Let's say somebody ate non-kosher food. And Yom Kippur comes and say, please forgive me for eating non-kosher food. You don't confess that sin the next year. If you know for a fact that you haven't done it, you do not have to confess it the next year. You did it already. And Yom Kippur atones, and it wiped out what we did last year. Yet the halacha says it's praiseworthy to do so. I did eat pork. And I ate pork. Even though Yom Kippur, I haven't eaten pork this year. And the last year, when I did eat pork, I already said vidui. I already confessed it on Yom Kippur. I already did tshuva. So why is it praiseworthy to go and mention it again, even though it's not halachically mandatory? Why is it praiseworthy? The answer is like this. I use it by way of analogy. There's a king, and this king has a day of grace, and there's one day, his birthday, the king's birthday, whatever it is. Anybody who wants could come into the king, and you could ask for whatever you want. Okay, so the first guy comes in. He says to the king, I need a new house. The king says, give him a new house. The next guy comes in, he says, listen, I have to marry off my daughters. I need money. Marry off the daughters. Next guy comes in and he says, I despise the White Sox. Right? And the king says, okay, put them in the minor leagues. Right? Okay. So the guy, okay. The fourth guy comes in and he walks up to the king and he burps loudly in the king's face. You like that, huh? Yeah. He burps loudly in the king's face. So there's a hushed, shocked silence in the court. In the palace, all the people are gathered there. They're like, what's going to happen to this guy? They're drawn and quartered. What are they going to do to this guy? So the king says, you insolent fool. Because of that, I am making you a member of my inner cabinet. Inner cabinet, because you burped in the king's face, makes you a member of the inner cabinet. So the guy goes to the first cabinet meeting, and they start discussing various issues that are going on in the kingdom. And the guy's sitting there and he's listening. He says, "Wow, boy, I had no idea the king was. Wow, he's got control over that also. Wow, I had no idea I burped in his face. My goodness, I can't believe I did that." And after 2 weeks, the king says, "I'm now promoting you to become the minister of the treasury." As a minister of the treasury. And he's what do you call it? He sees what the king's holding there. He says, "Wow, I can't believe the king has so much." And I burped in his face. I can't believe it. And after 2 weeks, he says, "Now I'm making you the minister of defense," which is the highest position in the land outside of the king himself. And he looks at the minister of defense. He's like, "My goodness, the king has a nuclear armament. He's got this. He's got that. I can't believe the military is so powerful. I burped in his face. My goodness, the guy's cringing in shame." He says, that's what's supposed to happen to us on Rosh Hashanah. On Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, after going through an entire year, yes, I confessed my sin the previous year. But the previous year, my relationship with God was at whatever level my relationship was. I had a certain relationship with God. And based on that relationship, I felt a sense of shame for what I did, and I confessed my sin, and I did tshuva. But after another year of growth, another year of working on ourselves and trying to advance in our commitment, each person at his level, a year's gone by, I'm at a higher level than I was last year. Each person could say that about himself. I'm at a higher level than I was last year. I've learned Torah, I've davened, I've done chesed, I've given tzedakah. I got a different connection with God now. And with that new advanced level, a person turns around and says, "Oh my goodness, that's what I did? I disobeyed God, who I now understand is even bigger than I understood last year because I've got a different connection." And therefore a person says a new tshuva. It's a new, you don't have to, but it's praiseworthy because it's in the indication that we have sensitized ourselves to the idea that God is infinite. My connection is even stronger. So a person who grows, and we are in growth mode. Sometimes we're at better days, sometimes, but in the course of a year, a person certainly grows. So the Torah is telling you over here, every day it should be a new covenant. Every day a new excitement. That means we should be looking. I once heard somebody said, when you take 3 steps back after you daven Shemon Esrei, right? A person davens Shemon, you take 3 steps back. When you finish your Shemon Esrei, you should have a different connection with God than you did before you davened that Shemon Esrei. And if there isn't a different connection, then how strong was that Shemon Esrei? It means, and we're doing this on a daily basis. On a daily basis where there are so many things, you don't realize, you probably don't realize yourself, how many things a Torah Jew is doing in the course of the day from the earliest years. From the early years, a little kid in the house, a little child in the house. I tell you, a little child in the house is already at a Shabbos table. He's hearing Kiddush. He goes with his father to shul. He's doing all this religious stuff. My kids used to play shul. Shabbos morning, my boys played shul. Right? He took a big beach towel, and one guy's the chazan, right? And one guy's the gabbai, and one guy's the guy who yells at the gabbai, right? And one guy's, he's the thing, and they play shul. It always ends with an ufruf. They always end with throwing candy, because in shul it always ends with. It always ends. Yeah, you stop and think. I don't do Catholic kids. I don't know if Catholic kids play church. Okay. We'll nail you up this week. No, you got me last week. See, I still got the swords in my hand. No, it's his turn. I don't know what exactly. Okay, well, let's have some wafers and wine. We'll play. I don't know if they play church. Jewish kids play shul. Could you imagine such a thing? They're playing shul. My daughters didn't play. They played wedding. That was a very confusing game. I never understood how that worked because one of them walks around the other one 7 times when she's holding a baby. So I didn't know. It was hard to follow. One's the father and the mother. One's the mother-in-law. It was very difficult to follow the rules. But at the end of the day, they're growing up all day long. Slichos. Now, we weren't in shul. We haven't been in shul enough this year, gentlemen. Now we got a few extra slichos to say now. Right? There's some slichos and Rosh Hashanah here in shul all day. Yom Kippur even longer. We're all day long. Yeah. And every time you pass somebody food at the table, you're not just passing them food. You're doing a chesed. You're doing it's an act. And if you think it, by the way, then it turns it into a bigger mitzvah. If a bus driver would think to himself, I'm not just driving a bus and making money. I'm doing a chesed for these people. I'm doing a kindness by giving them. You get paid for it because you have to support your family, which itself is a chesed. The Gemara says somebody who supports his family is doing tzedakah 24 hours a day. How do you like that? You think you're just going to work as an accountant and making money? You're supporting your family, you're doing tzedakah 24 hours a day. So we're surrounded by mitzvahs. In the course of the year, we're surrounded by mitzvahs. The Gemara says the least significant Jew is filled with mitzvahs like pomegranates. Like a pomegranate is filled with seeds. And you've probably heard there are 613 seeds in a pomegranate. I've counted it, it's not. I took apart a pomegranate once and I counted, it came out to about 217, something like that, depending on the size of the pomegranate. So I don't know who started that rumor, but we're packed with mitzvahs. So we're growing constantly. That's why the Torah says every day there should be a new freshness every day. Every day there should be a new amazement and a new freshness. It's not easy. Not easy, by the way. It takes time. That takes time. It's constant work, not it takes time. It doesn't happen automatically. And everybody goes through their better days. You can't. The most important thing is don't get upset. Sometimes you go to shul and you daven and you're miles away. You went through davening, you don't even remember. I took 3 steps back. Was I starting Shemon Esrei or finishing Shemon Esrei? I don't even remember where I am. Putting on, starting to wrap my tefillin. What's that? Am I taking it on or putting them off now? You don't even remember. You don't even know that you were there. Don't worry. Okay, tomorrow's another. Don't worry. There's always another davening lurking. Don't worry. You missed one davening, wasn't so great. Don't worry. There's a mincha coming up. There'll be a mincha coming, and after a mincha there'll be a ma'ariv. Don't worry. And on Shabbos there's a musaf. Don't worry. There's plenty of davening. My wife once said to me, can never relax when she goes out. When we go those days, back in the days, she can't relax. You go out for supper at a restaurant. A frum woman can't relax because her husband. You can sit in a restaurant. Husband, I got to catch a marv, right? And if you're, there's a shtibel nearby. Just wait here. I'll be back. So you go out and where were you? And come back. And, takes you a while. By the way, you should pay me for this. By the way, this is your ace in the hole when you're out with your wife's family. right? You're sitting in a restaurant and say, "Oh, sorry, I got to go down Marv." Then you come back 2 days later. Well, what happened? Well, it was Chazan took a long time. That's your escape hatch, right? At the end of the day, there's always, okay, there wasn't the greatest davening. Okay, I didn't have a great day yesterday. I was snapping at people. I was upset. I was angry. Okay, today try to be nicer to people. It's constant work. But the challenge here is to maintain the freshness. Okay, let's go on. Somebody had a question? Yeah.
Yeah. How does one actualize the realization of the grandiosity of God? The feeling that this guy burped in the king's face. This feeling that's like, wow, I can't believe I did that. You can know that, God is infinite, all powerful, but how do you realize that in actuality?
Good. That's an excellent question. The answer is again, I'm only telling you my personal experience. I'm not the Chafetz Chaim yet. What do you call it? I got to tell from personal experience that the more you do the right things, and the more you are consistent in doing it without forcing it and without getting stressed about it and without trying to get there. Sometimes people are trying too hard. I see people davening. Sometimes they're davening. It looks to me like they're going to get whiplash. Like that. Or something. Guys are shaking so hard during Shemona Esrei. You're worried the guy's going to injure himself. Right? I'm trying to have kavanah. You see a guy's trying to have kavanah, the veins are sticking out in his neck. Like that. That's not kavanah. You don't need to do that. Relax. Just relax. Just do it consistently, and just spontaneously you feel you got a different connection. You feel that God is more real in your life. Remember, God's infinite. So there's infinite connection, potential, closeness to God. And just do it without trying, without forcing it. Just like anything else, it's like a guy trying to develop a good backhand in tennis. Guy's trying to develop the perfect backhand in tennis. You can't just go out there one day and say, today I'm going to develop that perfect backhand. It doesn't work that way. It's thousands and thousands and thousands of repetitions. Just thousands, and one day it's just there. One day is like Larry Bird said. They asked Larry Bird, he said, he went out there and he practiced, he shot for 3 hours a day, and one day the ball just keeps going in. One day you just have the ball keeps going in. It just keeps going in. All of a sudden there's a much more consistent shot. Why? But it wasn't overnight. It was a result of all these hours and hours and hours. And that's what happens in Yiddishkeit. The more effort you make, for a man, the more Torah you study and the deeper you study it. If you learn Torah and you study a Tosos and you try to really figure out what's going on, you'll find the connection. For a man, that's where the main connection is. But it's got to be consistent. It keeps happening. It's not overnight. It's not overnight, and there's no end to it. Because everybody at every level, the Musar, I don't know if you ever heard, the Musar Svarim talk about, there's a concept called Yemei Ahava and Yemei Sina. Have you ever heard that concept? There are days of love and days of hate. Yemei Ahava and Yemei Sina. And what that means, according to Musar Svarim, is like this. There are certain days, I remember asking a guy here once, I asked him, after Rosh Hashanah, I asked him how davening was. He says, the first day davening was kind of dry. He said, the second day he felt he was connecting. I like the way he put it. He felt he was connecting. Sometimes you feel in davening you're connecting. Sometimes you feel you're just saying the words, which is fine. So you said the words. The worst thing you could do, well, today I don't feel like davening, so I'm not going to daven at all. That's the biggest mistake. You don't feel like davening, daven anyway. Because if you don't daven at all, the next day, you're not going to feel like davening anymore. To the contrary, you're going to get into a downward spiral of not davening at all. Go through the motions. It's okay. You had a difficult day. Go through the motions. A guy bats, he's 0 for 4. A baseball player's in a slump. He doesn't just sit on the bench. You're 0 for 12. You're 0 for 16. You just keep batting until you hit. And then you break out of the slump. That happens here too. If you sit on the bench, you're certainly not going to break out of the slump. So what was the question? What are they talking about? Yemei Ava and Yemei Sina. There are certain days where you just feel the connection is strong. The learning is going well, you're interested in it, your interpersonal relationships, you're being good to people, you're not thinking only about yourself, you're thinking about other people, you're not snapping at anybody, your davening is going well. There are other days where it's just dry. Everything is dry. The learning is dry. The davening is dry. You're irritated that people have the nerve to be on your planet, right? And it just right. Doesn't it ever happen to you in traffic? It happens to people in traffic all the time. Well, look at all this traffic. What are they doing on my highway? Right? Yeah. Well, they're thinking the same thing about you, by the way, right? They're thinking the same thing about you. And just be happy you're not in L.A. Otherwise, you get shot, right? If you right, and that could happen if you cut somebody off on a. So there's Yemei Ava. Now, when a mother takes a child, you have a 2-year-old child who's learning how to walk. You ever watch parents teach a child how to walk? You hold his hands, and all of a sudden the parents let go, and the child, he takes a couple steps, falls flat on his face, and everybody in the room goes, "Yay!" The kid's looking like, "Why are they clapping? I just fell on my face. What's everybody so happy about?" When does he develop better? When you're holding on to his hands, or when you let go? When you let go. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, sometimes he's holding on to our hands. That's when you feel, ooh, such a good connection. And sometimes he intentionally lets go. He says, okay, let's see how you do now. And you're like, oh, this is really rough. I don't feel like, it's like when you lift weights. If you lift weights, you can press 150 pounds. You press 150 pounds. Then you put it up to 170. And you can't budge it. You barely budge the thing. When are you developing your strength? And that's when your strength is developing. You don't even see the progress. You see much less progress, but that's where your strength is developing. So in Ruchnius is very much the same thing. There are certain days where Coach Baruch helps. They say, oh, well, anybody can do it when you're being helped out. The trick is, let's see what happens when we let go. Let's see what happens when you're on your own. That's what happens. That's the trick. That's the nature of the beast. Okay, I want to go on. I want to go on because there are a few more points in the Parsha I want to show you here. One of them pretty incredible here. Take a look at Perek Chav Ches Pasuk Beis 28:5. Now we get over here into the Torah. It talks about the good things. There are the good things. And then, did you notice at the Torah reading on Shabbos? Did you notice that the Balkori dropped his voice suddenly? That when he reads what's called the Tochacha is a rebuke. So he reads it quieter and he reads it quicker, and he also gets the Aliyah. As they call up the Balkori for that. It's not like we call somebody up, "Hi, come on up to the Torah so you could get cursed," right? So they by the way, there's an interesting story. There was a guy in a certain shul. They sell various honors and mitzvahs in the shul. So a guy came to the Gabai's shul. This week was going to be Parshas Savo. And he says to the Gabai, he wants to buy the Aliyah for the rebuke. Everybody says, "Aliyah for the rebuke." I'm the Balkori. We don't sell that Aliyah. He says, "No, I want to buy the Aliyah." So I don't remember if he asked the stipler or whatever it was. Guy said, "You want to buy it?" They said, make him pay a lot of money for it. The guy said, "Okay." So he donated a lot of money to the shul. Guy on Michiganer wants to get the Aliyah for the rebuke. Okay, he gets the Aliyah. 3 weeks later, he finds out an uncle in America died and left him a pile of money. A whole pile. He left him. My guy had to go to America to get over the company. Mamish became a multimillionaire. So they came to the stipler. He said, the guy bought the rebuke, and next thing you know, the guy's a multimillionaire. So the stipler started laughing. He said, "Look, I knew he'd get a curse. I didn't know it would be that big a curse." That's what the stipler said. So the tradition is that you don't. Now the Torah begins with, I know what you're thinking. Right. Yeah. No, guys, don't go buying this Aliyah now. It's just a story. Okay. So the Torah says, this is what's going to happen if you obey Hashem your God. Page 1074, 3 lines from the bottom. V'haya im shamoa b'kol Hashem Elokecha, lishmor lasos es kol hamitzvot, kol mitzvot asher anochi mitzvav chayom, unesancha Hashem Elokecha elyon al kol govei haaretz. You will be on top of all the other nations. And the next pasuk is very puzzling. Ubo alecha kol habrachos ha'ela v'yisigucha. These brachos will come to you, they will overtake you. Ki sishma b'kol Hashem Elokecha. How does the arts go and translate it? They will overtake you. Anything strike you as strange about that? Anything strike you strange about that wording? Again, I'm reading the pasuk again. Uvo alecha kol habrachos ha'ela. These brachos will come to you. V'hi sigucha, they will overtake you. Ki sishma b'kol Hashem lokecha, when you obey. And then it goes through all the various brachos. Anything about that wording? Nothing about that wording strike you as strange?
Overtake.
What's wrong with? Why is that strange?
Well, it implies that like it controls you. That is like too much for you.
Okay.
Or goes ahead
Okay.
of you.
Okay. You're right to a certain extent. You're right. What else does the word overtake imply?
That you're going down. Because
What do you say, Ezra?
in front.
I think it might be that you might be tempted to forget me. As far as
What is overtake? When you use overtake in a race, racer one overtook racer number two. He passed him, right? He bypassed. Now, overtake by a bracha implies that you're moving away from it, and it has to catch you and overtake you. Why would a bracha have to overtake you? I can understand if somebody says that the calamity overtook him. A person's running away from the calamity, and it overtook him. Why would a bracha have to overtake him? Why would a bracha have to overtake him? It means you're running away from the bracha, and the bracha overtook you. Why would a bracha have to overtake you? And why would you be running away from the bracha? That's my question. Is a Forsham asking. The word hisigucha means it's going to catch you. If it catches you, it means you were running away from it. Why were you running away from the bracha? The answer.
I mean, it makes me think about the Shuvah.
Before we're talking about physical brachas over here. You got all these brachas over here. Why would it need? Why do I need an expression? The bracha's gonna catch you. Let's forget the word overtake. It's too fancy. The bracha's gonna catch up to you. What do you mean catch up to you? Catch up to me means I'm running away from it. That's why it needs to catch up to me. Why does the bracha need to? Why would I be running away from the bracha? The answer is the Torah is telling you that in life sometimes we run away from the bracha, not consciously. Not consciously. We sometimes do the wrong things, and even in spite of ourselves, the bracha catches us. So I have a friend who became a multimillionaire. Now this guy, I knew this guy when he was young. He had zero noticeable talent in any area of life. He was not socially adept. He was probably if they would have had these expressions when I was growing up, he probably had every learning disability under the sun. He was not socially adept. He was nothing about him indicate he was not that kid in the yearbook they say most likely to become a millionaire. Right? He was most likely to become a truck driver, not a millionaire. The guy's a multi-millionaire, made piles in real estate. I have very little doubt that everything he did in real estate objectively was wrong. Whatever he thought invested in, anybody objective looked at it would have said it's wrong. Except HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided, yes, that's right. Right? I know, you never know how something is going to play out. So all of a sudden a guy invested in some swamp in Florida. You know, he got conned into investing into a swamp in Florida. Don't they sell property in Florida which turned out to be a swamp with alligators, right? And then it turns out that the head of some sort of some sort of mall decided that that's the exact property that he wants to drain the swamp and build a mall on. And the guy and anybody with rational thought would have said to you, you're going to lose your mind. That's a terrible investment. And the guy makes the investment anyway. And everybody agrees that they're laughing at the guy. Until all of a sudden some investor, some mall, a strip mall owner decides he wants to build a strip mall over there, and that's the perfect place that he wants is where because he likes alligators. So he decides he's going to drain the swamp and he's going to build his mall, and this guy becomes a multimillionaire. That's what it means it overcomes you. That's what it means it overcomes you. It could be a guy who decides he wants to marry a certain girl. The girl doesn't want him. So there's that second girl that he was thinking about. So all right, I'll marry her. Then the next day, her father wins the lottery. Like, oh yeah, I always thought she had a great personality. You know the way it goes. You know, all of a sudden, and the bracha chases you and it catches up to you, right? And she turns out to be a great wife and a great mother and a great cook and a great everything else and a great bank account. Everything you can possibly want. And the bracha is going to overcome. There are times in life, and if you're honest, gentlemen, I'll tell you, if you're honest, most of the things that you achieved in life that you did, that you were successful in life, most of the things you succeeded at were in spite of yourself, not because of yourself. Most mess ups are because of ourselves. Right? Anything that we succeeded at is in spite of itself. We did everything we could to interfere with Hashem, and He helped us anyway. That's the truth. That's what the Torah says. It'll catch up to you, and it'll overcome you. Okay, now I want to show you something. You have to see this inside. This is remarkable. I don't know how the Forshim thought of this. By the way, just for a little bit of entertainment, take a look at Pasuk Yud. It says V'ra'u kol amei ha'aretz ki shem Hashem nikra alecha v'yoru mimeka. The nations will see the name of Hashem upon you, and they'll fear you. And the Gemara says this refers to the head tefillin. Tefillin shel rosh. When people see us wearing the tefillin on the head, they get a little nervous. I've seen people looking at me in the airport when I have to daven. That's always fun, davening in airports. So I used to be very self-conscious about it. You got to daven, try to find a corner, go. So I was once sitting in the airport with my wife. I got to go daven, and I'm like, where am I going to daven? And I'm thinking about where I got to go. Look around to try to be as inconspicuous as you could possibly be with a big black striped cape, as inconspicuous. And I'm sitting there in the airport. All of a sudden, I hear a low rumbling sound, getting louder and louder. All of a sudden, a group of these Krishnas come walking by. They're wearing these orange capes they have this haircut with just a ponytail sticking out of their head like this, coming, and they come walking past me, and I'm thinking to myself, they don't seem self-conscious about what they look like in the air, but why do I have to be? At that point, I decided, I could daven. Don't go, you still should try to be discreet. Don't go daven right in the middle of the airport, but you got to daven. Try to find a corner, and also turn to a wall, because if you're facing the outside, sometimes there are people with clothing allergies, so you can't say Hashem's name facing that direction. So you face a wall and you do that sort of thing. So ever since then, I've had no problem. I try to be discreet, but what I enjoy is as I'm davening, people walking past, trying not to stare. I enjoy that. You can see people are fighting with themselves. They're like. They're just trying not to stare. Now, the best one was on a Lufthansa flight. I was on a Lufthansa flight from California to So it was me and 200 Germans on the plane. And here I had this I made sure that my tzitzis were sticking out, really in full view. I was enjoying every minute of it, just hoping they didn't all gang up and throw me over the Atlantic Ocean, throw me out of the plane. So at a certain point I had to daven. That was a great flight. That was just like one of those, if they had in cartoons, they have what you're thinking, what everybody's thinking. Yeah, if they could have put in what I was thinking, what they were thinking, I'm sure it would have been a lot different than what was said. You walk up to the counter and you're like, Dankeschön, yeah, Dankeschön, you too. Yeah, I know what Dankeschön means, yeah. And then you can just imagine what they're thinking, okay, like we missed one, I'm sure they were thinking, we missed one. Yeah, okay, I was actually having a good time. And so I get on the plane and I go over to the stewardess. I say, "Excuse me, is it okay if I pray?" So she says to me, "Yes, as a matter. Is there a place? Could I stand here and pray?" I made sure there was an empty area. And she says to me, "Yes, I actually like when people pray on the plane." You see, I'm a Muslim myself, so I couldn't think of the irony, the Jew and the Muslim in front of 200 Germans on this plane. And I took out my tallis, and there I made I put it on with zero standing there. I was right between the two sections, and you could tell people are looking. There I am with my cape and my So the Gemara says that when you have the tefillin on, when you have the tefillin on, so the tefillin is, people look at the tefillin and there's a certain intimidation. That's what the pasuk says over here. They will notice now. The plain meaning here is that the nations of the world will see that we're God-fearing. And when we are God-fearing, they'll be intimidated by us. The nations have a certain, the Jews, they see us as being different. They always have. And to the degree that we're Jewish, meaning that we are loyal to Torah, is the degree that they have a certain awe of the Jewish people, a certain respect for the Jewish people. So, they just had a report that King Charles, got to get used to saying that, King Charles, the chief rabbi of England, had a meeting with King Charles with some other clergy member. That King Charles moved the meeting back because it was a Friday meeting, and it was 5:30 in the afternoon. He told Rabbi Mervis, "Okay, you have to go home for your Shabbos." King Charles told him to leave early because apparently the rule is you don't leave until the king leaves or the queen leaves. And he said, "No, you could go. I know you got to get home for Shabbos." Right? So there's a certain respect when Jews, the more religious we behave, there's more respect for us. So there's an interesting question here when it comes to the name of God. The Yud Kei Vav Kei, we're not allowed to erase the name of God. And if a sefer, a chumash, or a siddur is worn out, we put it in the gniza and they bury it. You bury the old svarim are buried. They're buried because what are you going to do? They can't throw it in the garbage. You don't burn it. You don't throw it in the garbage. You put it in the gniza. You put it in and they bury it. Okay. So as a matter of fact, in a sefer Torah, what happens when the scribe is writing a sefer Torah? And Hashem's name, the Hashem's name is not correct. Now you have a problem on the Sefer Torah because you can't erase it. So there is somebody here in Israel who is able to take a razor blade, uses a razor blade, because what happens is if there's a mistake in the Hashem's name, you can't erase it. You can't even fix it up. Certain ways you can't even fix it up. So then you have to take out the whole panel, and you have to put that whole panel of the Sefer Torah in the Gniza. Now there's only one real option, which would be to cut out Hashem's name, and if it leaves enough of the parchment, then you could write it in over there. So there is a scribe here in Israel who he's able to take a razor blade, and he bends the razor blade, and using a razor blade, he actually cuts through, and I can't even imagine how he does it, but I know somebody who's a scribe who has gone to him and seen him do it. He cuts through. The parchment is fairly thick, and he's able to cut through the parchment, cut out Hashem's name in one piece, and leave enough of the parchment that you can now write in Hashem's name the correct way. It's an amazing thing, right? You stop and think about it. He's got to cut through. He does say, I take no responsibility. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But he's able to cut through and do it. So there was actually an interesting case of a kid in a Jewish high school who was upset with the administration. So he wrote Hashem's name. He spray painted Hashem's name on the chalkboard in the classroom with spray paint. Now you got a problem because you can't fix it up. In other words, sometimes the solution is, well, if you wrote a yud, just spray paint, turn the yud into a square, right? Just spray, and it's no longer existing as a yud, right? You understand? That doesn't work. Doesn't work. So they actually had to take the chalkboard and put the chalkboard in the geniza. Right, which opens us up to all sorts of possibilities. Because if there's somebody that you don't like, you could spray Hashem's name across the door of his car. Now you can't open the door because then you're breaking the letters. And obviously none of this is permissible. I'm sure there would be. So one guy asked. There was a shaila because somebody had written on his on the windshield. He had like dust on the windshield, and somebody wrote the Yud Kei Vav Kei on his windshield. Somebody actually in the dust on the windshield. So the posek said to him he cannot wash it off manually, but he could leave it outside, and if it comes off in the rain, the rain will take it off, right? So you're tampering over here with what they call with dangerous equipment. Right? You're playing with dangerous stuff. We don't write Hashem's name. We write either a hey and with a little slash. We don't write out Hashem's name at all. Okay, now. I don't know who thought of this, but I just want to show you something because if you take a look, the Torah goes into the various calamities. And when you get into the calamities, so if you take a look on the page 1078, we're out of time. We'll do this very quickly tomorrow, and then we'll go on to Parsha Tzavim tomorrow. Okay, but I have to show you. This is absolutely amazing.